Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Police arrest 2 suspects in connection with Tuesday's attack on U.S. consulate convoy in Anambra. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak agrees new defense and economic deals with Japan. Armenia Prime Minister agrees to trilateral talks with Azerbaijan President in Russia. My name is Femi Olanipekun. Now the news in detail. The Anambra State Police Command has said it has arrested 2 suspects in connection with Tuesday's attack on the U.S. consulate convoy in Ogbaru local government area. Preliminary investigations conducted by the police revealed that the 7 persons were killed in the assault. Of the 7, 3 were U.S. consulate officials and 4 were mobile police escorts. Speaking on the development this afternoon, the State Commissioner of Police, Echeng, said a joint security task force comprising of police tactical teams and troops of the Nigerian Army and Navy raided the suspect's hideout at Iguanocha community within the local government. According to him, the security operatives upon arrival met a deserted camp, and while the camp was razed down, 2 persons of interest were arrested. The police chief said further investigations are underway and findings will be shared with the public in due time. Outside Nigeria, airstrikes have pounded parts of the Sudanese capital Khartoum as further fighting erupted near a military camp in the south of the city. The army used air power and heavy artillery to try to drive back the paramilitary rapid support forces from residential areas of Khartoum and its adjoining cities of Bari and Omdurman. However, the Sudanese Doctors Syndicate has accused the RSF of attacking 3 ambulances and arresting their drivers, as well as a doctor in Khartoum. The union said it had documented attacks on 20 hospitals. And in the Middle East, the Palestinian Authority Prime Minister has condemned the Israeli flag march that is held annually in the occupied East Jerusalem as an absurd and provocative attempt to impose false facts on the ground. The flag parade will see tens of thousands of Israeli settlers march through the Muslim quarter of this old city. But in a statement today, Mohammed Shetaya said the parade does not give the Israeli occupation any legitimacy. He said that the march cannot change the features of the holy city with its Palestinian Jerusalemite residents, as well as its Islamic and Christian sanctities. The provocative march is meant to celebrate the occupation and subsequent annexation of East Jerusalem in 1967, a move that has not been recognized by the international community. And away from the Middle East, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has agreed new defense and economic deals with Japan in a visit to Tokyo ahead of the G7 summit in Hiroshima. Speaking on board the JS Izumo aircraft carrier, the PM announced a partnership featuring closer UK-Japanese cooperations between armed forces, cyber agencies, and semiconductor companies. He also said Japanese firms would be investing almost £18 billion in the UK economy. But Labour said foreign investment had plummeted under the Conservatives. The government is emphasizing it sees the region providing economic opportunity for the UK post-Brexit, as well as working with Japan and Australia to counter the strategic threat from China.
It's great to be here in Tokyo to start my trip to Japan, and the first stop is the Yokosuka Naval Base where we are now. That's because we're announcing a new defense partnership with Japan today, and the closer cooperation between our armed forces, our cyber agencies, and indeed our semiconductor companies and researchers will all strengthen our security at home. After this, I'm heading to meet Japanese business leaders who are announcing £18 billion worth of new investment into the UK. That's going to support and create jobs. And then I'm I'm looking forward to having dinner with Prime Minister Kishida tonight, reflecting on the modern partnership between our two countries that is delivering real benefits for people at home.
But to the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia has announced that African leaders would visit capital Moscow next month or early July under a peace initiative for the war in Ukraine announced by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said, taking into consideration the wishes of President Ramaphosa, the talks will most likely hold mid or end of June or beginning of July. On Tuesday, Mr. Ramaphosa said Russian President Putin and Ukraine leader Zelensky had each agreed to receive the 6-member mission which will visit Moscow and Kyiv. Meanwhile, Sierra Leone's president in an interview today said that he hopes the African mediation mission would help end the war which has hit the poorest of the poor around the world. Julius Maada Bio, speaking from the capital Freetown, told newsmen that the war had wreaked havoc in his country and other places. Similarly, Moscow has agreed to renew the Black Sea grain deal for 2 months, despite not seeing results when it came to implementing the parts of which apply to Russia. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov made this known at a news conference with his Ugandan counterpart, JJ Odongo. Mr. Lavrov noted that the deal was aimed at bolstering the food security of the world's poorest people. Moreover, he denied that Russia's renewal of the part-Turkish brokered deal was related to presidential election in Turkey. In the meantime, Ukraine says its air defense forces had shot down 29 out of 30 Russian cruise missiles fired overnight in an attack that targeted Odessa, the capital Kyiv, and other regions. The military revealed that the Russian forces launched several waves of missile attacks from different directions. It disclosed that a total of 30 sea, air, and land-based cruise missiles were launched, adding that its air defense systems destroyed 29 cruise missiles. Meanwhile, the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Oleksiy Danilov, has called Moscow's latest attacks in Kyiv senseless, actions that he claimed were being committed to raise patriotic hysteria in Russia. Meanwhile, NATO leaders are set to approve thousands of pages of secret military plans at its Vilnius summit in July that will detail for the first time since the Cold War on how the alliance would respond to a Russian attack. The move signifies a fundamental shift as for decades, the transatlantic alliance NATO had seen no need to draw up large-scale defense plans. But with Europe's bloodiest war since 1945 raging just beyond its borders in Ukraine, the alliance is now warning that it must have all planning in place well before a conflict with peer adversaries such as Moscow might erupt. By outlining what it calls its regional plans, NATO will also give nations guidance on how to upgrade their forces and logistics. In the U.S., Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis will officially enter the 2024 presidential race next week, according to two sources familiar with the decision. He will immediately become Donald Trump's biggest rival for the Republican nomination and shaking up a contest that largely has been one-sided. According to sources close to the governor, Mr. DeSantis will likely file paperwork declaring his candidacy on May 25 to coincide with a donor meeting in Miami. According to recent polls, former U.S. President Donald Trump has in recent weeks stepped up his political attacks on the Florida governor and maintains a commanding lead in the 2024 Republican primary. You're watching Spring Global and Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
Dramatists playwright and icon of Yoruba thematic arts. Duro Ladipo was born December 18, 1931 in Osogbo, southwest Nigeria. His clergyman father christened him Timothy. His other names, Duro Dola, Duro Shomo, Duro Rike, reflected his persona and the circumstances that surrounded his birth. The legendary stage actor had in several public fora identified himself as one of the greatest abikus born to die in this world. Family records reveal how he was born and died 13 times. The intertwining names he bore thus lent credence to his spiritism. Duro Ladipo was one of the best known and world-acclaimed Yoruba dramatists to emerge from post-colonial Africa. His notable works, Obakoso, Obawaja, and Moremi, took him beyond Africa to several parts of the world. By the time Duro Ladipo died on 11 March 1978, Nigeria's first cultural ambassador had acquired a towering image as an artist whose works adorned the frontage of Trenchard Hall, University of Ibadan. Western Spring Television identifies Duro Ladipo as a major character in history. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments against colonial policy of taxation as it affected the Nigerian women. Bere, as fondly addressed by her women followers, Fumilayo championed the initiation of universal adult suffrage, which gave an unprecedented leeway for women to contest elective offices and power to exercise voting rights. Married to a foremost educationist and teacher, Israel Oladoto Ransom Kuti, the first president of Nigeria Union of Teachers, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was the mother of children who inherited her spirit of activism. Olufela Ande Ololari, the former, a renowned musical legend. She was the first female student of Abeokuta Grammar School and the first female to own and drive a car in Nigeria. The award recipient of Member of Order of Nigeria MON and Lenin Peace Prize, was born on 25th October 1900 and was killed on the 13th April 1978 by rampaging road soldiers in Lagos. Western Spring Television identifies Fumilayo Ransom Kuti as a watershed character in history.
Thank you for staying with us. In Asia, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has agreed to a Russian proposal to hold talks in Moscow on May 25 with the president of its historic rival Azerbaijan. The negotiations will take place as tensions rise between the Caucasus neighbors who have fought two wars over disputed territory and will often see deadly clashes along the volatile border. Locked in a decades-long territorial conflict, Baku and Yerevan are negotiating a peace agreement with mediation from the European Union and US, whose diplomatic engagement in the Caucasus has irked traditional regional power broker Russia. Mr. Pashinyan told his cabinet in Yerevan today that he had decided to accept the proposal from Russia to hold a trilateral meeting under the mediation of the President of Russia on May 25. Tomorrow, foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan are set to hold talks in Moscow, hosted by their Russian counterparts. Baku and Yerevan fought two wars in 2020 and in the 1990s for control of Azerbaijan's mostly Armenian-populated region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Myanmar's military has imported arms worth at least $1 billion since seizing power in February 2021, despite overwhelming evidence of its responsibility for atrocity crimes. It was revealed in the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar, Tom Andrews' reports, disclosing that most of the weapons came from Russia, China, and companies in Singapore. The exports cover weapons, dual-use technology, and materials materials used to manufacture weapons exported from the day of the coup on February 1, 2021 to December 2022. It noted that the weapons and materials to manufacture more of them have continued to flow uninterrupted to the Myanmar military, despite overwhelming evidence of its atrocity. Myanmar was plunged into a crisis by the coup, which triggered mass protests. A deadly crackdown ignited armed resistance with ethnic armed groups that have long been fighting the military, joining forces with the so-called People's Defense Forces to fight against the generals. And still in Asia, Vietnam has criticized recent conduct by a Chinese research ship and the Philippine Coast Guard in the South China Sea. Hanoi accused its neighbors of separate actions that were violating its sovereign right. Chinese and Vietnamese vessels confronted each other in recent days on multiple occasions as Chinese research ship moved within Hanoi's exclusive economic zone, which experts said was likely a survey. Vietnamese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Pham Thu Hang told a news conference that the vessels violated the sovereign rights and jurisdictions of Vietnam, which was taking appropriate measures to defend its right. She also rebuked the Philippines for placing navigational buoys in 5 areas of its seas to assert sovereignty over the hotly disputed Spratly Islands. China claims almost the entire South China Sea as its territory based on what it says are old maps, including waters that lie within the EEZ of Vietnam and 4 other Southeast Asian countries. In other news, since Open Artificial Intelligence ChatGPT chatbox became the fastest growing application of all time, the widespread integration of AI into everyday life use has catapulted the tech to the forefront of public discourse, which has also kicked off an arms race with tech heavyweights like Microsoft and Google vying to outdo each other's AI accomplishments. According to a recent poll by Reuters and Ipsos, the swift growth of artificial intelligence technology could put the future of humanity at risk. These reports has more on the controversies surrounding the technology.
From the future of humanity to the future of jobs, artificial intelligence is raising questions about threats to life as we know it. In the 6 months since its November 30 launch, ChatGPT has shown the ability to perform a wide range of tasks, from cracking the bar and medical licensing exams in the United States to writing emails and songs, building apps, and translating a person's brain activity into texts.
The machine produced text that closely and sometimes precisely matched the intended meanings of the original words. The developers are talking about how this could benefit people who can't physically communicate, like stroke victims.
It is viewed by many as smart but scary. It has an almost limitless potential. It can even do some of the most revered jobs, like generation of stories like those written by journalists, transformation of industries from healthcare to finance.
It's a shame that we have to do this, but writers need to be able to pay their bills and live a decent life when they're writing this great material that we're all getting to do and that's providing such entertainment for everyone.
The potential of the AI explains why companies are racing to develop the technology, but many researchers fear AI could pose danger to humanity and are calling for a halt in its development. Billionaire businessman Elon Musk and a range of tech leaders have called for a pause in the development of powerful artificial intelligence systems to allow time to make sure they are safe. An open letter signed by more than 1,000 people so far, including Musk and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, was in response to San Francisco startup OpenAI's recent release of GPT-4, a more advanced successor to its widely used AI chatbot, ChatGPT, that helped spark a race among tech giants Microsoft and Google to unveil similar applications.
With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Didn't work.
Lawmakers and AI companies are also concerned, and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman testified before U.S. Congress, voicing concerns about potential misuse of the technology and asking for regulation.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world. I think that could happen in a lot of different ways. It's why we started the company. It's a big part of why I'm here today and why we've been here in the past and we've been able to spend some time with you. I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong. And we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government to prevent that from happening. But we try to be very clear-eyed about what the downside case is and the work that we have to do to mitigate that.
The fact that it is freely available for public use has opened up a plethora of opportunities previously thought beyond the realm of possibility of AI, even though the apps makers have faced criticism for opacity around the programming they have used to train it. Developed by OpenAI, a company backed by Microsoft, ChatGPT became the fastest growing consumer app in the world 2 months after its launch, with more than 100 million users by January. The early success recorded has prompted Microsoft to integrate its Bing search engine and Edge browser with the technology running ChatGPT in the hope of improving the experience of users. Similarly, Google launched an AI app known as Bard after unveiling a preview of the platform in February. Also in mid-March, China's tech giant Baidu announced its answer to the US app, a platform called Ernie. Both Bard and Ernie have suffered from early stumbles as the AI arms race heats up. The new platform can analyze images and more extensive text of up to 25,000 words, create a website from a hand-drawn sketch, and recreate games within seconds. In summary, ChatGPT and its rival AI models could dramatically disrupt the labor market, including replacing routine jobs in some sectors. But overall, the technology could enhance productivity and complement human workers instead of leading to unemployment, experts assured. The ChatGPT and other similar platforms are fundamentally different from previous generations of AI is because of the GPT, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Ultimately, these tools use a technique known as deep learning to produce and analyze texts, answer questions, and perform other language and speech-related tasks in ways that can mimic human beings better than ever before. Temitakpe Ajijalaluola, Western Spring Television News.
Moving on, Montana Governor Greg Giafonte yesterday signed legislation to ban Chinese-owned TikTok from operating in the state to protect residents from alleged intelligence gathering by China, making it the first U.S. state to ban the popular short video app. Montana will make it unlawful for Google and Apple's app stores to offer TikTok within the state, or will not impose any penalties on individuals using the app. The ban is to take effect from January 1 next year and is almost certain to face legal challenges. TikTok, owned by Chinese tech company ByteDance, in a statement said the new law infringes on the First Amendment right of the people of Montana by unlawfully banning the social media app. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has approved a $3 billion bailout program aimed at alleviating the country's economic crisis. Ghana's Information Minister Kojo Oppong Nkrumah told newsmen a 3-year extended credit facility was approved yesterday in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, IMF Director General Kristalina Georgieva said the deal will help the country as it goes through the worst economic crisis in ages. The West African nation has been battling its worst economic crisis, marred with inflation, debt burden, and the depreciation of the cedi against the US dollar. It is expected that $600 million, the first batch of the loan, will be remitted to Ghana as soon as possible.
Partners with Ghana in addressing the difficult economic and financial conditions the country is facing. Today's decision is also a major milestone for the G20 Common Framework. The commitment by the Official Creditors Committee to help make Ghana's debt sustainable was essential for the approval of the funds program, and it signals important progress in the G20 Common Framework. The decision our board has taken is the beginning of the work we will do together with the authorities of Ghana for the implementation of the program for the benefit of the people of Ghana.
What are some sports stories now? Premier League has released its Manager of the Year nominations list today, with Newcastle boss Eddie Howe, Brighton's Roberto De Zerbi, Arsenal's Mikel Arteta, Manchester City's Pep Guardiola, Fulham's Marco Silva, and Aston Villa's Unai Emery nominated for the award. The Premier League also revealed the nominees for the Player of the Season, which include City's duo of Kevin De Bruyne, Erling Haaland, Arsenal duo of Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard. The list also includes Tottenham Hotspur striker Harry Kane, Manchester United's Marcus Rashford, as well as Newcastle right-back Kieran Trippier. Meanwhile, the competition also revealed the nominees for Young Player of the Year of the season. They include Newcastle's duo of Sven Botman and Alexander Isak, Arsenal's trio of Gabriel Martinelli, Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, Brighton's duo of Moises Caicedo and Alexis McAllister, as well as City's goal machine, Erling Haaland. And staying with the Premier League, Leicester boss Dean Smith has confirmed that Nigeria forward Kelechi Iheanacho could return to the squad for City's game against Newcastle on Monday. Smith, speaking in his pre-game press conference, said the forward was back in training and will be assessed on Saturday. The Leicester boss also was optimistic about Kieran Desbrew Hall, disclosing that the midfielder had an infection on his ankle and will return to training on Saturday. Dean Smith further on the club fans to back his side as they fight to avoid relegation, noting that fans are the most important part of the football club.
The fans are the most important part of the football club. And I said after the game, I don't think there's many clubs in the country, if their team goes off at 2-0 down at half-time and they're in a relegation battle, that they're not going to get some sort of stick walking off the pitch. I think that's being a football fan. We as coaches have to look at it a little bit more rationally than that and take the emotional aspect out of it. But we need our supporters, and listen, I don't need to pay homage to these players. I've inherited a squad. I've not brought any of them in. So, I can openly criticise them if I need to. I don't feel I need to, and I choose not to, because the work ethic I see is there. And the numbers that I get from my performance department prove to me that it's there as well.
And before we end the Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. A police command in Anambra State has said 2 suspects have been arrested in connection with Tuesday's attack on the U.S. consulate convoy in Ogbaru local government area of the state. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has agreed new defense and economic deals with Japan in a visit to Tokyo ahead of the G7 summit in Hiroshima. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has agreed to a Russian proposal to hold talks in Moscow on May 25 for the president of his historic rival, Azerbaijan. You can follow us on all of our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. My name is Femi Olani. Good evening.